So today we're in one of the most famous and most picturesque tourist destinations of Austria. This is Hallstatt.
Located along the southwestern shores of the Hallstättersee in the Salzkammergut region of Upper Austria, the famous town of Hallstatt is one of the most renowned tourist attractions in all of Austria. So much so that in recent years, this UNESCO World Heritage Site has suffered from over-tourism due to its world-famous scenic aesthetics and natural beauty. This was supposedly further exacerbated by huge media attention, as well as a replica village being created in China, and rumours of Hallstatt's inspiration to famous high-production animations that led to a boom in the town's exposure and thus rousing further curiosity among more prospective tourists to come and visit. With hundreds of thousands of visitors visiting Hallstatt each year, it's understandable as to why it can get overwhelming for the town's residents of just under 800 people. Hallstatt is largely defined by its traditional architecture, its scenic lakeside allure, and the surrounding landscape in which it is situated. But there is far more to the story of Hallstatt than the aesthetics that have come to define this beautiful gem.
The community of Hallstatt also provided its namesake to the ancient Iron Age community, the Hallstatt culture, that once resided by this lakeside and the nearby salt mines.
Archaeological evidence suggests that there may have been up to 7,000 years of human activity in what is today's area around the Hallstättersee and the Salzberg Valley, the latter of which also incorporates the vicinity around the famous salt mine. However, what is more compelling is the existence of the Hallstatt culture that had existed between the late Bronze and early Iron Age periods, circa 1200 to 500 BC. Remnants of the ancient Hallstatt culture have been found within the vicinity of Hallstatt since the mid-19th century, when an Austrian mine operator by the name of Johann Georg Ramsauer discovered a prehistoric cemetery with over 1,000 burials in the area. Further burials were then later discovered to help substantiate the existence of this ancient civilization. Though they were largely an agricultural community, evidence of their advanced metal and mining works have also been discovered. Archaeological findings also seem to suggest that the nearby salt mines had been extensively exploited by the ancient Hallstatt people between the 8th to the 5th centuries BC, which contributed to their lucrative economy. The conditions of these mines helped to preserve the artifacts of the Hallstatt peoples for thousands of years, including various garments, pieces of textiles and leather, and even an ancient staircase. A tour through the salt mines provides more details and depictions of the lives and workings of the Hallstatt people. Artifacts are collected and displayed by some of the town's museums, and understandably, the Hallstatt Museum holds one of the largest collections of antiquities related to the Hallstatt period than anywhere else in the world, another being the Natural History Museum in Vienna. It is also believed that the town of Hallstatt itself may even be sitting on yet more evidence of this ancient civilization, and could even be the site of an old settlement. Beyond ancient history, little is known as to whether there was settlement continuity in the area, and information about the town during the Middle Ages is also relatively scarce, though we do know that a number of buildings did originate during the medieval period. Its significance as a trading town is further substantiated by the fact that Hallstatt obtained market rights in the early 14th century. Most of the buildings in today's Hallstatt were built from the Baroque, Classical and Romantic periods, and many of the older medieval buildings were also renovated and extended during these three epochs. The Katholische Pfarrkirche Hallstatt, or the Catholic Parish Church of Hallstatt in English, has a history that goes back to the early 12th century, and in fact, parts of the tower are still preserved from this era. Further constructions to the church occurred in the early 14th century and again in the 18th century following a fire that ravaged much of the original structure. Walking through the church's rather unique looking cemetery, you will eventually reach Michaelskapelle, or St. Michael's Chapel in English, which you will find adjacent to the rock face. Here you will find the famous Kernel, or better known as the Beinhaus, translated in English as the Bone House, which is also part of Michaelskapelle. The Beinhaus has hundreds of human skulls in its collection dating from between the late 18th and early 20th centuries, even though the chapel itself actually dates back all the way to the 12th century. The tradition goes that when a newly deceased resident was to be interred at the church cemetery, the skeletal remains of the previous occupant were removed to make room for them. These remains were then taken to the Beinhaus or the nearby Ossuary. In some cases, family members and relatives of the deceased would preserve their memories by adorning their skulls with decorative inscriptions and paintings. Many of these are on display to the public in the chapel today. Although the majority of Hallstatt's residents are Catholic, Lutheranism has existed quite prominently in the area since the early 17th century. The Evangelical Church was originally built here in Hallstatt as a prayer house during the late 18th century and was later constructed into a church in the 1860s. Today, both the local Protestant and Catholic churches are integral aspects of the local cultural architecture. Hallstatt is abundant in fascinating places to discover, and the town also has much to offer in terms of activities.
Among some of the fun activities to do in Hallstatt, as well as visiting the museums and the salt mines, is to sail along the Hallstättersee.
This also gives tourists an opportunity to appreciate the beauty of the town and its surrounding landscape, particularly from various perspectives of the Hallstättersee. Seeing Hallstatt from across the lake also enables you to visualize its expanse and townscape. While in Hallstatt, you can also go to some of the area's high viewing points, waterfalls, and even lakeside beaches. With all of that taken into consideration, there is no wonder why Hallstatt remains to be one of the most visited beauty spots in Europe. But as we've learnt, Hallstatt is more than just a pretty exterior. It's also a town and an area with a proud heritage that dates back to antiquity. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel.